So we are broadcasting now. Hey everyone, glad you could tune in. Wanted to share something or some news with you as it relates to end time Bible prophecy. So if you're not familiar with who I am, the Revelation Watchman, West Watchman Brooks, my job is to show you what God is showing us all as it pertains to end time Bible prophecy and what we see happening in the world today, and point you to the scripture of God's word so that we can endure and so we can watch as Jesus tells us to. And so that when we start seeing these things, we can do what Jesus tells us to do, which is to hold our heads high up because we see that our redemption draws near. And I'm broadcasting on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. What I wanted to do was touch on a particular topic in the book of Revelation and in Daniel that discuss the topic of the 10 kings. And this is going to be pretty interesting to see. So, what I want to do first is share my screen. And what we're going to do is go over what I said to watch for the last 13 years, and then show you how what I said to watch for is panning out just as I said so that you can see that what's happening is actually uh, turning out to be true. So let's go here. So what I'm going to do is point you to my website. Again, this is my website, therevelationwatchman.com. And let me make sure we are broadcasting first on. All right, now we're live on TikTok, Instagram. Good. Okay, so what I want to do is share this with you. I just found this news update, and I had to share it with you all because it is mind blowing to see how, it's mind blowing to see how what I've been saying to watch for 13 years is starting to pan out. For so long I've been consistent with what the scripture says, and what do we see? What the scripture says, what we see, and what we're going to watch today. I haven't even watched the entire clip because I was just too excited and I wanted to get a authentic response to what's happening in the press conference, so that you could see in real time that this is authentic. Okay, but let's do a quick backstory. Okay, so you could catch up if this is all new to you. Now, again, if you're unfamiliar with the Book of Revelation and Bible prophecy, it's been prophesied Daniel and Book of Revelation that the end time there will be 10 kings that will rise. Eventually, these 10 kings are going to come together and they hand their power over to the false prophet. False prophet will then hand that power over to Antichrist, and together the false prophet and Antichrist will go conquering and to conquer. Now, I'm going to share my screen here, and I want you to see something. Okay, I want you to see how for many years I've been saying to watch for this, so you can see that I have receipts. This is my website, the Revelation Watchman. So again, I made this site very easy to follow. So if you're new to Bible prophecy or you want to see things from a different perspective based on what we see happening now, not follow the traditions of men, but follow what the Word of God says and comparing it to what we see right now. You can't. I have to really say this, but you cannot apply what the Scriptures is telling us to watch for to information given 50 years ago. God is updating us in real time, just like how Jesus update Israel in real time when he was walking the earth. There was things they didn't know, even though they knew the scriptures. But when Jesus came to the scene, he was updating them with new information that they weren't familiar with. So this is my website, and you can go learn about these various topics. But I want to bring you to what I call here the Watchman Tracker. Now, here in this Watchman Tracker, what you'll find is me just like a detective trying to piece all this together with the Word of God. But what I want you to see here, here's a list of things that I've said to watch for and events I said to watch for that later came to pass. For example, starting with, I said, we need, since 2013, that's when God called me to the service. I said, watch for a new king in UK and Denmark because it prophesies to the last two queens of the 10 kings in Europe. Two were remaining: Queen Margaret of Denmark, Queen Elizabeth UK. Once those two queens were replaced by kings, it will fulfill the 10 king prophecy. And I've been saying that for the last 13 years. And as you can see, Queen Margaret passed away. I mean, as you can see, as time would have it, we see that Queen Elizabeth did pass away, giving rise to the ninth king. And then we see right before her, we found that Queen Margaret abdicated, giving rise to the 10th king. So between Queen Margaret and Queen Elizabeth, those two queens were replaced to collectively fit the 10 king prophecy of Europe. And I say Europe specifically because of all the continents where there are monarchs, there are 10 in Europe. But more specifically than that, you see on the same page that between the East-West Roman Empire, which is the iron legs of Daniel's prophecy in Daniel chapter 2, East and West Europe consist of what we call today Europe and the Middle East. This is the region of the Roman Empire when they split in 395 AD, which reflected it's reflected in the two legs of iron in Daniel chapter 2 prophecy. So with the two legs of iron that you see there is the East-West Roman Empire. But it evolved to what we have today called Europe and the Middle East. And then you can see also how I said here in June 27, 2014, as I was reading the book of Revelation and discerning, hey, Prince Hassan bin Salah of Jordan and Pope Francis, everything's pointing to these guys to be the false prophet Antichrist. So you can see here, June 27, 2014, I said, watch for these two to meet. 3 months later, they met. So what I said to watch for happened because I took this from the scriptures. Again, from the scriptures, so you can understand the context of where I'm coming from with this. From the scriptures, we know that Judas is called the son of perdition and the Antichrist is called the son of perdition. So the Holy Spirit is saying, hey, what you learn about the first son of perdition in Judas, you can learn about the second son of perdition with the Antichrist. And when we look at that, we see that Judas met Jesus first. Then later on, he became the son of perdition and fulfilled all the prophecies that Jesus said he was going to do. He didn't just betray Jesus the first day he met him. Judas, the first son of perdition, met Jesus. Then at a later time, Judas did what prophecy said he was going to do. Taking the example the Holy Spirit gave us, I adopted the same method, saying that, okay, well, if I'm leaning towards these two be the false prophet and Antichrist, they have to meet first. Then together they're going to do what the Bible says they're going to do. And that's the approach that I explained. 3 months later, they met. And likewise with, I said, watch for a new king in Denmark, watch for a new king in UK. And you can see here, this is a snapshot of, for 13 years to date, saying, watch for a new king in UK to Denmark, watch for the 10 kings, watch for a new king in UK and Denmark, watch for the 10 kings, over and over and over and over and over again. And now what I'm going to show you is mind-blowing, because what we see happening now, what we see happening in the world today is leading exactly to these 10 kings from Europe that I've been saying to watch for the last 13 years. So watch this clip here. This is my first time seeing it. I didn't watch the whole thing yet. Okay, so I'm new to this too. So you're going to see my reaction in real time. But this is quite astounding to see. Finally, after so many years of me saying, I'm going to make the screen again larger for those who are just jumping in the chat. Finally, for so many years, I've been consistent. I haven't deviated. I haven't changed. I haven't wavered from this consistent message that God is showing us all. I'm not special, but I'm just showing you what God is showing us all and pointing to the scriptures. That's it. It's just that God has called me to be this public figure and make these videos and these live streams for you all. But as you can see, these are, like my brother Christian like to say, these are my receipts pointing to the East-West Roman Empire. Now, here's something. Okay, I just got to mention this real quick. Be patient with me, guys, because I know I'm going to get this in the chat. I'm going to get the DMs. I'm going to get the messages, and I have to address this. Many people speculate these legs of iron is not the Roman Empire. It's when Islam covered the face of the earth around the 700 AD, and that's not true. They will agree from the gold head, silver chest and arms, bronze waist. They will all agree head is Babylon, silver chest and arms Persia, bronze waist is Greece. But when it gets to the legs, many will say in this space, they'll say, oh, this is Islam. This is where Islam ruled the world. That's not true. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And let me show you, not my pattern, the pattern God has established. So in the same, and again, folks, if you just go to my website and go to right here, this is the Watchman tracker. Okay. These are the things I've said to watch for that later happen. So when you go here, just read exactly what God has showed us. The gold head, which was King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, destroyed the first temple. As you can see, the first temple was destroyed with King Nebuchadnezzar, right? Solomon built it. King Solomon built it. King Nebuchadnezzar destroyed it. King Cyrus of Persia restored it. King Antiochus Epiphanes, a Greek Syrian king, defiled it. That's the first abomination of desolation that Jesus talked about. So the first abomination of desolation is what King Antiochus Epiphanes of Greece who was a Syrian king. He defiled it. That was in the Bronze Era. King Titus of Rome destroyed it in 70 AD. So what you see here is a consistent pattern of the temple, the temple, the temple, the temple, and the temple. The king, a king, a king, and a king, and a king. In 70 AD, around the time when the Islam ruled the earth, around 700 AD, there was no temple. There were no kings defiling, creating, restoring a temple in Jerusalem. That's why that concept is disqualified, because it does not fit the pattern God has told us and showed us over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. From King Solomon to King Titus, a king built it, a king destroyed it, a king restored it, a king defiled it, a king destroyed it until there was no stone left on one another, like Jesus said. That disqualifies the concept of the bronze waist in this era is when Islam ruled, because that's not true. And so when we see in the end times, as we're anticipating the third temple, it will be two kings again that will restore the third temple, one from Rome, one from Europe, one for the Middle East. Specifically, I'm leaning towards Pope Francis and Princess Hassan bin Talal of Jordan. So you can understand, okay, this is you. It's not my pattern; it's God's pattern. It's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So now, what we're going to do is look about this 10 kings, and this is going to be very exciting to watch. So now, we're now about to show and about to explain how these 10 kings play a role, or what we see now. It's so astounding to see now how we could be anticipating the rise of the 10 kings, which means Pope Francis could be right around the corner. So here we go. So let's gonna go ahead and share this right now. Okay, so these are the European nations who are starting to form an alliance. Let me do it side by side. That'll be easier, because I really want you guys to get my reaction on this. Okay, here we go. So what we're looking at now are we're looking at European nations who are coming together to form an alliance without America, without the United States. They're coming together, or as I'm reading the description, they're coming together to speak upon forming a new alliance absent of the United States. And remember, in my book, I explained how something has to happen that pulls America out of end time Bible prophecy or in the Middle East, because as America currently has support for Israel and provides weaponry to Israel, we read that in end times when Israel's about to be destroyed by the Antichrist and her neighbors, no Western nation comes in and saves the day. So we find that there's something has to happen, something has to give way that will enable America to pull out of Middle Eastern affairs and give rise to these 10 kings. So this is just setting up the backstory. So let's watch. Here we go.
Resources that we work together and pooling our resources that we're increasing as part of our NATO pledges. How do we pool those and be more effective? Operation Cold Response, all of us involved in that with a number of other nations, is an example of a practical example of that. There are many others. So that's the first thing. The second, Judy, you referenced resources, and there are considerable resources, both physical, critical minerals, and, for example, in Norway, as well as other.
So let me zoom this out. Hopefully, I can get this in full within one shot. There we go. So look at this. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, Canada is not a monarch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or the total of 5 European nations, of which 3, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, are monarchs. So we are seeing European nations, of which 3 are monarchs, coming together to form a new alliance absent of the United States. Exactly as I'm trying to get you all to see, we are moving in the direction of the 10 kings, because 3 of the 10 monarchs are here. 3 of the 10 are here. Now let's continue to watch and listen to. This is about security. And as I wrote in my book, these 10 kings going to have to form an alliance together, because they have to respond to the absence of the United States. Something happens, but remember, presidents dictate foreign policy. So something happens to where the president pulls out of Middle East affairs, or something happens to the president, or the president makes a foreign policy decision, etc. But the 10 kings respond to that for their own security. So let's hear what they have to say, because this is how it begins.
Their economies, Canada included. So how are we going to develop those ourselves with partners at speed and scale that are there? And then the last point I'll make and then hand over, which is, of course, security is much broader. The capabilities.
You hear I'm talking about security. This is, again, about military security. This is not just about trading wheat and barley and other things that are mundane. No, this is a military alliance, something that even NATO, something outside of NATO, it seems. So this is something new that we're seeing in real time.
In space, the capabilities in AI, in quantum and others, again, where we have quite complementary skills. What we're doing, is discussing, is how do we pool those
Gotta pay the bills.
cooperate, again, positively take more responsibility, and we're solving issues for our citizens. That's our jobs. And in that regard, it reduces the threats.
Can I follow up briefly on that question? You know, Prime Minister Fredriksson gave praise to the speech that Prime Minister Carney gave. Let me give praise to the way the Danish Prime Minister has stood up for some principles which are absolutely key. For Denmark, for the Kingdom of Denmark, for the people in Greenland, it's for them to decide.
Denmark is a monarchy, one of the 10 monarchs of Europe.
On what happens in the Kingdom of Denmark. But what she has stood up for is much more than that. It is for basic principles of international law, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity, which is not simply language in school books. This is hardcore realities of how we preserve freedom, democracy, and we have stood by these principles because we are close to Denmark in this Nordic family, but also because it really matters to all of us. And I'd like to also to say that this is responding to threats which are unacceptable in general, but even more unacceptable among allies. But I would say what follows from this is also a great range.
Specifically, he's talking about allies like the United States that recently threatened Denmark, recently threatened Spain. And so we see Europe is being disrespected by the United States president, in which they don't like that. And they see the aggression of the United States going to war with Iran. And this is making Europe feel very uneasy. And the fact that he was going to go and take Greenland too, which would be a NATO ally attacking a NATO member. So that would then just totally dissolve NATO. In fact, they're probably recognizing the fact if a NATO member attacks another NATO member, then NATO's irrelevant. It becomes null and void. Because they're not supposed, that the agreement is they don't attack one another. They're allies. So he could be speaking to that, even though he's being vague about it. But specifically, you see how the aggression from the allies is a way he's trying to not be so forthcoming. But essentially, he's talking about the United States.
Of opportunities, which we have discussed around the table today. That our countries have things that we can do together, that we will do together, because it's really beneficial for our populations, for their work, for their income, for their security. And meetings like the one we've had today is really helping us to launch on that path.
And the next question comes from Maria Andersen, Denmark's Radio.
Yes, and I have a question for Prime Minister Mark Carney, but also for the four Nordic leaders of Denmark's neighbors. Here you are side by side talking about the importance of unity. If a country within the NATO alliance tries to take over Greenland, would Canada then be ready to contribute with military forces and actually put up military resistance to protect Greenland?
Okay, she's going straight to the point. If a NATO member, such as the United States, attacks Greenland, will the other NATO members attack? So that is a loaded question. So I'm curious how they're going to respond to that.
Well, the first thing I'd say, thank you for the question. We stand foursquare behind the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity. It is for the people of Greenland and Denmark to decide their futures. And first point, being absolutely clear about that, being clear that we will back that with measures as necessary as a partner, and being, I think the fact that we and others have been clear, I don't want to put it on Canada, but European Union and others have been clear about these fundamental principles and the principle of solidarity has helped to create the space, which always should have been there, to be clear, to develop a better security umbrella in the Arctic, but also including Greenland. So we're clear on where we stand, and we.
So you hear how he said how he wants to create a better security blanket in the Arctic, aka Europe, and the other Nordic nations. This is about Europe's new security. This is, make no mistake, they're looking at a new European security, which again goes back to what I've been saying we need to watch for, which is the rise of these 10 kings that I explained previously. So you can see that the rise of the 10 kings is what's key with all of this, because that's the next chapter, that's the next prophecy we're waiting for. Revelation 17:12, the rise of the 10 kings, which will come from Europe, because there are 10 monarchs in Europe. And so again, I've been consistent with this for so long. In fact, if you go back to my website and you go to unfulfilled prophecies, and these are the prophecies we're anticipating next, what we're looking for here is the rise of the 10 kings. With Pope Francis, of course, resurrecting the false Christ that Jesus mentioned, but the 10 kings, verse 12, the 10 kings, that's key to this. Pope Francis will kick it off, but right now we're anticipating the rise of these 10 kings with Pope Francis. Which comes first? It could be the 10 kings come first, Pope Francis come first, they come at the same time, don't know. But we know Revelation 17 verse 12 is what we're waiting for, where we see the 10 kings with Pope Francis. Verse 13 says, then they give their power and authority to Pope Francis. So verse 12 is when we see 10 kings with Pope Francis the beast, and then we see verse 13, they give the power and authority to Pope Francis. So that's the transition. But again, we don't know with verse 12, do the 10 kings come first, then Pope Francis, or Pope Francis, then the 10 kings, or some event, and then they both come at the same time, or something of great magnitude that will change the course of human history happens, and then Pope Francis pops up in response to that as if, oh, God sent him. God sent them. Say, for example, this is a hypothetical. Say, for example, the president just said, there's no way Israel will use nukes. No way Israel will use nukes. So that's what I just posted this video recently. The president said, there's no way, absolutely not. There's no way Israel will use nukes in this conflict. But a Trump advisor also said recently that it's a likelihood that Israel will escalate using nukes. So if Israel used nukes, that could, for example, backfire in the president's face, be so embarrassed, and he just withdraws and says, I'm done. I didn't ask for that. I'm out of there. Gives him a way out, which is the administration is looking for, an off-ramp. And also, if that were to happen, the whole world would be sympathetic and be in solidarity with Arabs and Muslims because of what they just did. And then on top of that, the whole world will have such a contention against Israel for what they did. And on top of that, can you imagine if Israel launched a nuke on Iran and then Pope Francis pops up on the scene? The whole world interpret that as the first time the planet has seen a nuclear bomb, and God rose Pope Francis from the dead to save the world and usher the world to a path of peace. Just think about how that entrance would be spectacular in terms of how he would enter on the scene of the world after a nuclear explosion seen in the face of the planet. But let's keep going. Okay.
If I were to respond on behalf of Norway, we are part of an alliance based on collective security. And what we have done over the last year, the Arctic 7, is to develop the script.
Did you hear again? Collective security. This goes back to the rise of the 10 kings. The collective. I want you to really, I want to dial in on this. Collective security, the rise of the 10 kings. That's what we're talking about here.
On how NATO will look after security in all of Arctic. We have our more geographic close parts of the Arctic, where NATO has been present, has had the strategy and regional plans for a couple of decades. And now we are broadening that. So I would approach that question by saying, you know, that NATO allies stand together, and we have developed plans to deliver on that.
And I think it's fair to say that we quite recently fully and firmly proved that we stand behind Denmark.
Yes, we stand fully behind Denmark, and we will. And I'm proud how united we were a few months ago, and we need to continue. But what is important now is strengthen Arctic security together. And from my perspective, Arctic security is one of our biggest concerns. Arctic starts from our eastern border and continue to the Greenland and.
Stay in control with next day delivery on most orders. For your shutoff valves, call, clickgranger.com, or just stop by. Granger, for the ones who...
Canada. That's why we need to work together and strengthen Arctic security.
The next question comes from the Swedish news agency, TT. Henrik Samuelsson.
This question is mostly for Prime Minister Carney, but also for Prime Ministers Kristersson and Støre. There's been reports in the last few days about intensifying Canadian interest in acquiring submarines from Norway, Germany, and fighter jets from Sweden. Can you say if this was discussed at all today, and also the significance of this type of military hardware operation in this new security, global security environment of today?
Okay. Well, let me answer the specific, but let me make a couple of general points, which is that we have a procurement process, particularly for the submarines, which is at a stage where the final bids, there are two final bids for those submarines. Those are in, and they're being studied and worked through by an independent process. So it's not for me to comment on that, and we're not having discussions about the specifics of that. But you're
So he didn't deny it, but you see what they are talking about is military hardware being sold to these neighboring these countries working together. So again, this is about security in the in the trading and selling of military assets. So again, this points to the rise of the 10 kings, and it's not about just trading currency and agriculture. This is weaponry we're talking about here.
Your question is very well motivated, and it's part of the spirit of what we've been discussing, which is that we are all making significant additional investments in our defense and security to protect our peoples, given the threats that have gone up immeasurably, well, measurably, but significantly. We all agree that that if we individually spend that money, or we spend it in an uncoordinated way, it's not going to be value for taxpayers. It also will not protect our people as much as we should, and it will not have spillover economic benefits to create good jobs and better futures for our citizens. And this is where the complementarities come in. So expertise in aerospace, expertise in maritime, expertise across here in just a whole range of domains, including all aspects of artificial intelligence, material science, and beyond. And so we're looking for specific opportunities in order to develop in a way that is mutually beneficial. I'll finish with this fact, which is historically, when Canada has made defense procurement, 70 cents on the dollar, more than 70 cents on the dollar, has gone to the United States. Not just to American companies, but gone to the United States. That's not an effective way to build our industry.
Oh, so now they're going to cut America out of the buying process. They're cutting America out the market. They're cutting America out the market. So again, this is a total shift. Mind you, it's not uncommon to see nations work together, but when you have NATO nations making a new alliance with America excluded from that alliance, and here the Prime Minister of Canada is saying, we're not going to even do business with them anymore. We find it it's not efficient. And then we're not going to do business with them anymore because remember, Canada was threatened by the president, Greenland was threatened by the president, Denmark was threatened by the president, Spain was threatened by the president. When you threaten your allies, they're not going to work with you anymore. So again, all of this seems to again be pointing to the rise of the 10 kings that I've been saying to watch for over 13 years now. So it's quite astounding to see this in real time.
To protect our people. And so what we've been doing, we will still do a lot of procurement with the United States, to be absolutely clear, but in all cases looking to procure much more in partnership, and it's a much broader range of countries with whom we can partner. Last point, particularly given the maritime and Arctic nature of the security needs we have, plus the virtual, the Nordic countries are natural partners for Canada, the short answer.
If I may just, I have 100% respect for that process that Canada is now undertaking when it comes to submarines. That's a big undertaking. But for Norway's part, when we are doing this kind of maritime cooperations as we do with frigates with the United Kingdom and submarines with Germany, it is a big industrial adventure. But beyond security and industry, it is really also creating a unity of purpose when it comes to security.
Beyond security and industry, security. This is giving rise to the 10 kings mentioned in the book of Daniel and mentioned in the book of Revelation. We're seeing European nations come together to form an alliance outside of the United States. Because remember, and I wrote this in my book, how America is not, or no Western nation is mentioned in the end times to go rescue Israel when the Antichrist goes to conquer and to go conquering. So something has to happen where America is pulled out of the theater of Middle East conflict and gives rise to the 10 kings. For some group in the world has to be the police and the cop on the street. And so, as I've been saying for 13 years, watch for the rise of the 10 kings. We are now seeing European nations come together to form an alliance, and from the Denmark's prime minister's mouth and the Canadian prime minister's mouth, for security. For security. This is about security, which is essentially foreshadowing the 10 kings that I've been advocating to watch for.
Because you are in a way integrated in a way you work together, which is linked to geography, the way you are operational, and you'll basically have the same equipment, the same standards. And that, of course, is also important from a security.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking.
I can't stand ads.
Good example on cooperation in military industry and security is our cooperation to build icebreakers with Canada.
Yeah. Very good.
And the next question comes from Iltalehti in Finland. Anni Emilia Allentola.
Thanks. This is about the nuclear weapons, and it's for all of you. What are your thoughts about opening a discussion in your country, in your own countries, about loosening restrictions or policies when it comes to nuclear weapons, even during the peacetime? Thanks.
Maybe I can start. I want to say that Finland does not seek to have nuclear weapons to our territory. And
it's funny that they're speaking right now about nuclear weapons because, the president just said recently how President Trump said there's no way, absolutely not, never going to happen where Israel will use nuclear weapons against Iran. But then we see, right after that, we see a presidential advisor says that Israel may likely escalate the war using nuclear weapons. And so I kept wrestling with what is that moment, where event plus United States equals no more support for Israel. Because remember, something has to happen to pull America out of Middle East conflict. And I was talking to another Watchman Christian that told me about this, and he said, and brought up, what if there's a nuke that's used? Well, that would be a total game changer if that happens. If Israel uses a nuke when we see the world really don't want to see anything like that, and the president saying that would never happen, and then they did, it would totally be an embarrassment to who's really in charge. And because of that, and his his ego and bravado, he may want to save face. That event, if it would happen, would call the president to pull troops out of the Middle East, and Israel found herself alone. And the world collectively will be overnight would have contentions and anger and resentment towards Israel, which explains the rise of the Antichrist. We always suspect, the Antichrist is just going to come in and he's going to just deceive people. But way we see events happening unfolding right now, he could be responding to the world and their anger, animosity, and contention against Israel for what they're doing or what they might do. And he's called and risen up as someone to give to response to the world for someone to do something, as opposed to how we're always taught in tradition, and traditionally, Antichrist is going to deceive people. No, what we're seeing now is something different. So it's quite interesting to see how the 10 kings got to come, what Israel's doing, how anticipating Pope Francis, and what could be that moment that changes everything.
Nor is NATO making any such plans. What we are doing at this moment in Finland is our purpose of the government is to remove legal barriers which do not exist in this form in the other Nordic countries. On nuclear weapons, the initiative to adopt the French nuclear deterrence to increase wider European security, it was positive, but Finland has not had similar discussions as some other countries who are also presented here, but we are interested to hear more because we need to strengthen European deterrence.
Did you catch that? He said we need to strengthen European deterrence. He didn't say we need to, mind you, he's the PM of Finland. He didn't say we need to strengthen Finland's, we need to strengthen, just the Nordic region. No, he said we need to strengthen, we need a European deterrence. So you see that this again is a response to the current situation to give rise to the 10 kings. So they are looking for someone or a new alliance to create in response to the current day and age and where the world stands today, which again points to the rise of the 10 kings that Daniel prophesied in the book of Revelation. Hope you guys seeing it now.
I think the most, and following up on what Petri just said, I think the most important thing is to build a stronger NATO and European nuclear deterrence. It is a part of our overall deterrence of Europe and NATO, and therefore from a Danish perspective, we are now doing two things at the same time. We are deepening our engagement in NATO when it comes to nuclear deterrence, and at the same time we have accepted an invitation from France when it comes to deepen our cooperation with them. And I think it's positive from a European and from a Danish perspective also to be stronger in this area, but it has to go alongside with many other capabilities and many other investments as we're doing at the same time.
Well, for Norway's part, we are not changing legislation. We don't have to. We have our clear policy. There will be no stationing on nuclear weapons in Norway. We are a member of an alliance which has a key nuclear deterrent, which was confirmed at the recent NATO summits, and that is there. The French initiative, we have not been involved in the early stages of that, but we are ready to talk to France as we develop a strategic partnership with France on defense. To hear more about how their plans are, and obviously that is something which will go on for some time, but the key thing here is not to weaken what is already the nuclear deterrent of NATO, upon which we all depend.
Yes.
Websites your competitors don't want you to know.
Oh, come on.
All you do is go to this website, and it lets you find out exactly.
Canada does not seek nuclear weapons. There's no change in policy there. We, as others do, benefit from our membership of NATO, an alliance which does have a nuclear deterrent at its heart, as you know. I'll make two final comments. One is commend President Macron's initiative to provide a layered element to that deterrence. The modalities and the breadth of that, of course, to be worked out, but we commend that initiative from a NATO perspective, from a European security perspective. It's not directly affecting.
European security perspective. European security perspective. Again, this points to the 10 kings that we are anticipating. This is the building blocks. This is how it begins. It starts to brew like this. so that when whatever event that's going to change the course of history, these 10 kings are going to be right there on it.
Canada. And then the last thing, which is not nuclear per se, but I just underscore in terms of the changing threat environment, the risk to Canada from new missile systems, hypersonic missiles and others, is necessitating big investments, including in over-the-horizon radar and beyond, in order to have a deterrence there.
Yeah, and I can easily echo what Mette Fredriksson just said, that we stand fully behind the NATO's common nuclear deterrence. We have no plans at all to change our own doctrine regarding nuclear weapons, and that does not exclude in any way our future potential cooperation with France when we now initiate this dialogue with France.
Yeah, on Iceland's part, we don't see any changes coming up. We only just recently said yes to nuclear-powered submarine stocking in our waters. That was a big step for us. So, I mean, we are still under our ongoing strong partners of NATO, and we don't see any changes to that nuclear umbrella.
The last question today comes from Gladys Fouché, Reuters.
Good morning. My question is about Arctic Century and is for each of you. What is the #1 challenge, whether short-term or long-term, that you want Arctic Century to help you solve?
Commencer avec... Well, the biggest, I'll start. Look, the biggest security threat, physical security threat in the Arctic is Russia. And there are various aspects of that. There are other layered threats in there, but first and foremost, and consistent with many of the other aspects of NATO security development, is unfortunately, it is a common threat, and that is the case in the Arctic. First point. Second, I just underscore that it is welcome, arguably overdue, but welcome, that now NATO is focusing increasingly on Arctic security, and Arctic Century obviously is a manifestation of that. It needs to be fully developed, and what you're hearing from all of us is the commitment in order to do that. Mette?
Can I just add, I totally agree with Mark, and what we have seen until now has been different kind of training activities and so on. I think what is most important about Arctic Century is that we now want to be permanent present in the Arctic region. And by the way, as everybody knows, in the Arctic region, it's enormous, and there are a lot of differences in the region. But to be permanent present and to also have the support from the rest of NATO, because as Arctic states, I mean, we have been aware about the security situation, of course, for many years, and as Mark just said, it is changing because of Russia. But now we have the support from the rest of NATO. We need to be permanent present. We need to be strong on surveillance, and we need, of course, together to invest in the needed capabilities, and by common procurement, by common investments, and by this framework that has been decided on, I think we are in a much better and in a much stronger position now to protect the Arctic region.
Can I say that if you think about NATO's presence in the Arctic and you go 20 years back in time, it was very little. And we have worked on Arctic nations to bring the Arctic to the center of attention of NATO, because NATO should matter.
Again, for those who are just tuning in, what we're looking at is many European nations coming together, talking about European security. Specifically, they're talking about the Arctic region where Greenland is at. But here you find of these nations from Europe that have come together: Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and I think those, three of these monarchs that are present are of the 10 monarchs in Europe that the book of Revelation says has to come in the end times, mentioned in the book of Daniel and also in the book of Revelation. So what we have here that you're seeing, if you're just jumping into the chat for the first time, is that we're seeing how these European nations are coming together, trying to form a new security alliance, absent of the United States in the context of the United States aggression with Venezuela, Greenland, Iran, and threats to Spain, threats to what was another European nation that the United States threatened? I think it was Denmark. So they're now responding that things are changing so rapidly that, and that being that the United States is a NATO member, and a NATO member attacking a NATO member was something they never considered or even conceived that could possibly happen. And if that would happen, then NATO is irrelevant. It is obsolete if NATO attacks the NATO member. So what they're coming up with is their own European alliance. And Canada's joined in, Finland joined in, Greenland joined in. But specifically, what I want you to pay attention to is the monarch nations, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, who are present here, which it could, this moment right now, could evolve to the rise of those 10 kings, because we see 3 of them there already talking.
Matter to all of NATO territory. So I would say that this initiative should respond to security and stability. And right now, as we speak, we have 34,000 troops exercising in northern Finland and northern Norway. That's a NATO exercise being led for the circumstances in that part of the Arctic. And now we are also developing capacities tailored to the challenges in broader parts of the Arctic. So this is the right thing to go. You don't need the same response at every place, but I agree with Prime Minister Carney that Russia is a defining threat. On the longer horizon, you can see China, you can see other dimensions, and we should, prepare in time for that.
Can I come in on that? I think this is exactly what we were discussing in the beginning of sort of, I hate to call this a silver lining, but I mean, the countries in this region have for a while been talking about increased presence. For NATO, we just discussed this in Jeff with the Joint Expeditionary Forces. And even for a country like Iceland that doesn't have a military, we have a lot of personnel and support capacities that need to have training, need to have...
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello.
Okay, so...
In aerospace, expertise in maritime, expertise across here, in just a whole range of...
All right, so that seems to be the conclusion. Well, not conclusion. It seemed like they were interrupted. They didn't show a whole video. But so far, what you can see here is quite astounding. You're seeing how the European... Did I lose a connection? Oh, there it goes. I thought I lost a connection. What you're seeing is the Europeans coming together, speaking about NATO, speaking about...
So welcome to this press conference.
Speaking about the things that's happening as we speak. So I want to go over another extended version because it will make sure we capture everything.
With the prime ministers from Norway, Canada.
We are stronger together, and we have addressed today issues which... Good morning. This has been a good...
Okay, so here's the intro. We didn't catch the beginning of it because, again, I just caught this, and I thought it was the whole interview, but it's not. So let's continue to watch. This time is another clip that has an extended version. Let me read. Actually, here we go. So I'm going to share my screen here. All right, and here we go.
The working session among close friends. I'm very happy to host Prime Minister from Canada, Mark Carney, visiting, and then be able to unite my Nordic neighbors here at the Nordic-Canadian meeting. Soyez le bienvenu, Monsieur le Premier ministre. On est ensemble ici, les pays nordiques et le Canada. On est proches en géographie, en valeurs. Tous nos défis devant nous. Et nous savons discuter et nous sommes plus forts ensemble. We are stronger together, and we have addressed today issues which really are critical to all of us. We are Arctic nations, and the Arctic perspective when it comes to security, how are we going to look after that security inside the transatlantic alliance, how we are going to secure critical dependencies of our economies as we develop our societies further, how we are going to protect our values as open, liberal, modern democracies in a world where autocratic forces are moving ahead and are weaponizing critical resources. These are issues that matter to our countries.
Okay, let me translate what he's basically saying. You saying the United States are changing things in the geopolitics or the entire world security, that they have to reorganize and readjust because the United States, who is a NATO member, was just about or was threatening European nations who are also NATO members and putting Europeans at a position to have to go to war with America to defend other Europeans. And for example, we have the aggression of the United States against Venezuela. We have the United States threatening Canada. United States threatening Greenland. United States threatening Denmark. United States threatening Spain. And so we see this change happening that is making Europeans feel very uneasy, which is resulting in this experience, this moment that we're seeing right here, where they're coming together, which goes back, which points to the prophecy in Daniel chapter 2 and 9 and in Revelation chapter 17 about the rise of these 10 kings that's going to come at the end times.
I'm particularly happy that we can do a Nordic-Canadian convention here. And we have
just a mental note. Notice America is not mentioned in this new formed alliance trying to heighten the security of Europe. No, just notice that America is not here.
Agreed to follow up this meeting and to be more concrete on what we really can do together as six, but also as we bring these critical issues into the agendas beyond the six. There is the European Union on the European side. There's an upcoming NATO summit. We have work going on in WTO, in the United Nations. And we believe that these six countries are not weak countries. They are strong countries in terms of their values, in terms of their determination. And we are ready to follow up from discussion you have seen in our common statement today. These are also critical issues for developing modern green economies that take advantage of new technologies, development in space, artificial intelligence. So we have a lot we can do together. So thank you, colleagues, for being here. And Prime Minister Carney, for you.
Prime Minister Stora, colleagues, c'est un grand plaisir pour moi d'être ici. C'est une dimanche matin plus agréable, plus efficace que depuis longtemps, peut-être certainement pendant la période que je suis Premier ministre du Canada. It's been a very effective grouping. I thank you for bringing us together, a group of countries that share common purpose, shared values, and a capacity to work with others. Capacity to work with others, this grouping, informal grouping, but also in more formal groupings, such as the Arctic Council, in NATO, in the Coalition of the Willing. And this is important because we are all facing a growing list of challenges, challenges to Arctic security, challenges that come from the changing nature of warfare, challenges which interact with changing technologies and conflicts, both actual and virtual, that are moving closer to all of us. As the Prime Minister just said, and as our discussion reflected, security is moving beyond traditional areas of energy security, food security, and of course defense security into core strategic capacities driven by the changing nature of our economy. So critical minerals, artificial intelligence, space, all aspects of digital infrastructure. And what we see is, as our economies and our expertise is a large degree of complementarity between us. And so what we've been discussing is how we can work together in order to increase our own strategic autonomy, increase our resilience, but also to solve immediate issues in terms of jobs, employment, and do so in a way that is consistent with our values on sustainability. So it's core to Canada's strategic interests to work together with this group. Nous pouvons en faire encore plus dans les domaines du commerce, de la défense, des technologies qui redéfinissent l'industrie et la vie même. Et nous avons la force, l'ambition et la détermination nécessaires pour défendre notre souveraineté, sécuriser l'Arctique et bâtir ensemble. Alors, thank you very much, and pass to colleagues.
The next speaker is the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen.
Dear Mark, it's great to have you among us, the Nordic leaders. And I have to say to you that you have a lot of supporters in our countries. The speech you gave in Davos, I have never experienced anything like this. I mean, people in Denmark, and I guess the same goes for the rest of the Nordic countries, have been talking about, they have been reading your speech. And I don't think I have ever heard so many reflections on a speech from a colleague as I have heard about your speech in Davos. And it is because you show leadership. You are talking about how democracies can work together and that we have to connect even closer in this world where the old world order is gone and it will probably not come back. So we have to build.
Did you hear that? Did you hear what she just said? She's acknowledging, along with the other ones who probably consent to the same thing and are in agreement with it, she's acknowledging the old world is gone. The old world order is gone. The whole NATO alliance and everything that they used to have as a cooperative allies working together, those days are gone. This again points to exactly what I said we need to watch for, which is the rise of these 10 kings mentioned in the book of Revelation and end time Bible prophecy. This is what we're waiting for, guys, right here. We're waiting for Revelation 17, verse 12, the 10 kings, and which is mentioned in Daniel and Revelation. And how do we get that? You can't get the 10 kings if America's a superpower on the scene. So something has to happen that pulls America out of foreign affairs, specifically in the Middle East, that caused the whole world to have an anger and resentment towards Israel, and the call for new leaders, which specifically goes to, 1 second. There we go. Have a cheap camera. So as I said, this calls to where the whole world calls for new leadership with the rise of these 10 kings mentioned in Revelation 17 and Daniel chapter 2. And so to get to this moment where there's a 10 kings, because remember, you don't need 10 kings if America's on the scene. So something has to happen where it shakes up geopolitics that calls for this new alliance. And we see, well, in order to have a new alliance, the old one must not work anymore. And she just acknowledged it. She just acknowledged it. Let's hear that again. This is incredible.
And I don't think I have ever heard so many reflections on a speech from a colleague as I have heard about your speech in Davos. And it is because you show leadership. You are talking about how democracies can work together and that we have to connect even closer in this world where the old world order is gone. And it will probably not come back. So we have to build something new. And it has to be a world order that is built on the values that we represent, the leaders standing in front of you today. I am very grateful, I have to say this, for all the help we have received in the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland and Denmark. We have had a totally unacceptable pressure from US and the US president. It has been very difficult for the people in Greenland to experience this.
Did you hear that? Did you guys hear that? She said, we've had unbelievable pressure from the United States. That is the key. Remember in my book that you see right here, remember in my book that I wrote called The Following Way, this is it right here, The Following Way. You can get this on my website, which is it's on Amazon, published by Amazon. But you can see in my book, I mentioned that as well, that in Revelation, that something has to happen that pulls America out of the Middle East conflict, that has to give rise to the 10 kings. And here we're seeing the Prime Minister of Denmark speaking, which is a monarch nation, one of the 10 kings, where we see how she's saying that the United States has put relentless pressure on them, as well as Spain, as well as Denmark, as well as Greenland, as well as the UK, as well as Venezuela. The list goes on. So they're recognizing, like she just said, the old alliance is gone. And this is just confirmation of what I've been saying to watch for. This is incredible, guys. And again, this isn't fear marketing, fear mongering. This is to show you the truth of God's word. Because remember, Jesus says, when you see all these things, hold your head up high because your redemption draws near. This isn't about scaring you. This is to show you that God's word is true and that our redemption draws near. You don't want to stay in this world because you see how bad it is. And remember Jesus' message of endure and watch. So this is incredible. This is totally, totally incredible. I'm so psyched up. I got to start this over. Start this over. Let's hear what she had to say again.
And it will probably not come back. So we have to build something new.
Let's go back a little bit more. Here we go.
Leadership, I've been talking about, they have been reading your speech. And
Wow, this is
I don't
it.
think I have ever heard so many reflections
is
on a
exciting.
speech from a colleague as I have heard about your speech in Davos. And it is because you show leadership. You were talking about how democracies can work together and that we have to connect even closer in this world where the old world order is gone and it will probably not come back. So we have to build something new. And it has to be a world order that is built on the values that we represent, the leaders standing in front of you.
What value is better than the monarchs of Europe? They all share that. That is insane. The monarch, that's what they have in Europe. The values that they have in Europe that they all recognize, that they're all familiar with, is monarchs, crowns, kings. It's the most noble, most prestigious, highest form of exemplary notoriety, nobility, professionalism, exquisite is the crown. Is that is what they all share in common. That is why we see this happen. And look, let me show you this one more time. So again, what we're looking at here is Revelation. Let me make this a little bit bigger. What we're looking at here is Revelation chapter 17, verse 12. Now, this is where we are. Okay, so we can really understand what's happening here. Get rid of this advertising right here. Boom. This is where we are right now. Revelation 17, verse 12. The 10 kings with the 10 horns, which you saw, 10 kings who have received no kingdom as of yet, because the military power is with the parliament. They are the ones that issue the orders. But the crowns can take that back through a process known as royal prerogative. But they receive authority as for 1 hour kings with the beast, Pope Francis. So this is where we are right now in terms of the prophecy we're waiting for, the 10 kings. The come, which is also mentioned in Daniel. And we see now the values that they all share in Europe is this Europe, the monarch tradition, the monarch culture. That is what they all have in common. So it's quite interesting to see this in real time and to see her talk about it. Very, very exciting.
Today, I am very grateful, I have to say this, for all the help we have received in the Kingdom of Denmark, Greenland and Denmark. We have had a totally unacceptable pressure from US and the US president. It has been very difficult for the people in Greenland to experience this. And one of the reasons why we have been able to stand firmly on very common values, that you have to respect sovereign states, that you have to respect a people's right for self-determination, is because of our good friends in the Nordic countries, in Europe, but also with partners outside, especially you, Mark. So,
in the Nordic countries and in Europe, see, this is what this is leading to. These little breadcrumbs is ultimately leading to the rise of the 10 kings, which I've been saying to watch for the last 13 years. I've been saying, watch for the rise of the 10 kings, watch for the rise of the 10 kings. So you can see, man, this is what we're looking for. This is what we've been saying to watch for the last 13 years. Watch for the rise of the 10 kings, watch for the rise of the 10 kings, watch for the rise of the 10 kings. I've been very consistent with this, and this is quite incredible because the 10 monarchs of Europe will come from the East-West Roman Empire. And there are no 10 monarchs in the Middle East, but there are 10 monarchs in Europe, which is once the iron legs of the book of Daniel prophecy. So this is quite astounding to see.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. Now we have to continue our work. We are deepening our cooperation in the Arctic region. It is important. We are deepening our cooperation also militarily in our own region, not only the Arctic, but also more locally in the northern part of Europe. It's going I think, in the right direction. But with everything going on now, with the war going on in Ukraine, US unfortunately lifting up sanctions on Russia, a war in Middle East, countries like ours have to stand together. We have to stick together and we have to work together. And that is
wow. This is definitely a case for the rise of the 10 kings. Quite amazing.
Is what we have committed ourselves to do once again. So thank you, Jonas, for convening this meeting today.
Okay, so that really just encapsulates everything I've been saying. She said exactly what I've been trying to convey or anticipate how we would see the rise of the Ten Kings. We see the conflict in Ukraine. We see sanctions lifting from Europe. We're seeing adversity coming from the United States towards Europe. We're seeing U.S. aggression in Venezuela. We see conflict in the Middle East. We're seeing so many things happening that Europe is taking a second look at this European security from a different point of view, and now they're seeing that they need to come together on their own shared values. And there's nothing more than a shared value of the Europeans other than their monarchs. That's what they all share. They share a monarch tradition and culture that we in the West are not familiar with. The Scots, the UK, Denmark, Sweden, Liechtenstein, Norway, I can't think of everything all the time. Denmark, for example, they share collectively that experience. So that's what she's talking about.
The next speaker is the Prime Minister of Sweden, Ulf Kristersson.
Thank you so much, and I do agree, and it's really great to see the most Nordic country outside the Nordics in a meeting in the Nordics. So really great to see you here. I think it's a sign of our time, honestly, that the Nordic Five and Canada is working so well together. It proves your case. Middle powers make big difference. And it goes for geography, obviously, the Arctic not least, Ukraine, the rules-based world order, technology, and trade. So I think we have so many similarities, and we need to be more proactive and be more forward-leaning. And I think that has been the theme for this meeting today. So thank you so much.
The next speaker is the Prime Minister of Finland, Petteri Orpo.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jonas, for hosting this excellent meeting. And Mark, great that you are here today among friends. It is important for Finland to further deepen cooperation with Canada and our fellow Nordic countries. We are committed to building our partnership. This meeting is an important step on that path. We are united by our shared values and our northern location. We are committed to supporting Ukraine. We are committed to strengthening Arctic security. We need to have a strong NATO in the Arctic. Canada and the Nordic countries have made significant investments in our capabilities in the Arctic. With our shared Arctic expertise, we can also support our allies to develop their capabilities. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is the Prime Minister of Iceland, Kristrún Mjöll Frostadóttir.
Thank you very much. So nice to be here on a Sunday morning. And I would like to echo what the previous prime ministers have said. I think there's a lot of not just leaders out there, but also general publics in a lot of different countries around the world that are very thankful for the leadership Canada has shown over the past few months. I think definitely there has been sort of a void that has to be filled when it comes to global leadership. These are obviously difficult times in a way, but there are also opportunities that...
You hear what she just said? There's definitely a void that is being missed by global leadership. Who else, if that, you know what I'm about to say.
Come from this. It's not the first time in history where shifts have taken place. And I think this is a strong group of countries that can show that we can do this from a position of strength, build sort of new communities of investments, but also opportunities. And I think Arctic is a very important region in that aspect. Iceland has obviously felt the pressure and felt the sort of shift in action around us. We've been worried about Greenland. We're obviously worried in general about the situation in Europe when it comes to Ukraine. But we're not afraid. We see this also as a way to sort of shift alliances in the sense that, even though we're not closing anyone off, we're also just sort of broadening our scheme. And I think this group joining together with Canada shows that there are great opportunities out there. There are silver linings to these types of events. The focus for NATO, for example, has been brought up north. The discussions about Arctic security, Arctic opportunity, economic integration is also more relevant today, and Iceland is going to be a big player in that area. So we welcome any type of cooperation, and I think this group shows that you can show up with a calm and collected front through times like this. We don't always have to be reactionary, and this is one of the things that we discussed, and I'm looking forward to seeing some concrete measures coming out of this and deliverables.
And now we'll open up for questions, and the first question comes from Ståle Talsnes, TV2.
Thank you very much. My question is on the war situation in Iran and the Middle East.
Good question.
I ask, it's in principle to all of you prime ministers. Have you discussed or reached a Nordic-Canadian alignment regarding how to end this war? And what are your respective countries' analysis and contributions to such a solution?
How are they going to answer that?
Whose war is this really?
Are they going to say it?
Well, I think
They're going to say it?
we are not part of this war. We did not initiate it, but we are all affected by it. So I think there's a clear...
Whoa! Europe coming in saying, this is not our war. We have nothing to do with this, but this is affecting us, putting America on blast. They are not getting involved in this war.
Call here that international law must be respected, and it should be the responsibility of the concerned parties to find ways of ending the hostilities that now have great impact around the world.
And the impact is the Strait of Hormuz being closed off, and this is causing oil prices to go up. And so since restrictions you have with Russia providing oil to Europe and the Strait of Hormuz being closed down, these are having an impact directly to Europe because Europe gets its oil and energy from the Middle East.
Concerned to see that there is still an escalation. There are still worries about how the world economy will be affected by the energy situation around the Gulf. For our part, we will use any channel we have, any opportunity we have to urge the parties to find a way that will not escalate this war. I think that's what we can say. It is not our war. It seems to us that the plan for how it will develop is pretty unclear. And that's the danger with initiating wars, that they rarely follow a script.
It's true.
The next question comes from Canada, and Judy Trin, CTV.
This question is to all the prime ministers. As Arctic nations with valuable resources that President Donald Trump wants,
they are going in.
do you feel the U.S. threat to Greenland's sovereignty and Canada's?
First question, what are you going to do about the war? And what are you going to do about the war in the United States? And Donald Trump. Oh my goodness, what are these guys? Like, could we have talked? These prime ministers are like, is there anything else we have talked about besides that?
Sovereignty is over. And what specific actions can you, as middle powers, take together to defend each other against threats to your nation's self-determination?
Okay. Well, maybe I'll start since it comes from Canada. It's a very fundamental question, and I think that give a sense of the spirit of the discussion and how we move forward. This is a very positive discussion. So it's how do we take more responsibility, even more responsibility for Arctic security? How do we work together in pooling our resources that we're increasing as part of our NATO pledges? How do we pool those and be more effective? Operation Cold Response, all of us involved in that with a number of other nations is an example of a practical example of that. There are many others. So that's the first thing. The second, Judy, you referenced resources, and there are considerable resources, both physical, critical minerals, and for example in Norway, as well as other economies, Canada included. So how are we going to develop those ourselves with partners at speed and scale that are there? And then the last point I'll make and then hand over, which is, of course, security is much broader. The capabilities in space, the capabilities in AI, in quantum and others, again, where we have quite complementary skills. What we're doing is discussing is how do we pool those, cooperate, again, positively take more responsibility, and we're solving.
Notice this politician didn't bring up the United States, and that's not by accident.
Solving issues for our citizens, that's our jobs, and in that regard, it reduces the threats.
Can I follow up briefly on that question? Prime Minister Fredriksson gave praise to the speech that Prime Minister Carney gave. Let me give praise to the way the Danish Prime Minister has stood up for some principles which are absolutely key. for Denmark, for the Kingdom of Denmark, for the people in Greenland, is for them to decide on what happens in the Kingdom of Denmark. But what she has stood up for is much more than that. It is for basic principles of international law, national sovereignty, and territorial integrity, which is not simply language in school books. This is hardcore realities of how we preserve freedom, democracy, and we have stood by these principles because we are close to Denmark in this Nordic family, but also because it really matters to all of us. And I'd like to also to say that this is responding to threats which are unacceptable in general.
He's talking about the United States.
But even more unacceptable among allies.
The United States, the only NATO ally threatening NATO.
But I would say what follows from this is also a great range of opportunities, which we have discussed around the table today. That our countries have things that we can do together, that we will do together, because it's really beneficial for our populations, for their work, for their income, for their security.
Okay, so we must have started after they did their introductions, but this is now something we already saw in the beginning of the video. But as you can see right here, this is really interesting that I hope I shed light on to find out how the Europeans are coming together to form a new alliance in response to security, because the threats coming to Europe, Denmark, Greenland, Spain, UK, all these different European nations being threatened by the United States is unacceptable. And so you find that what we see happening here is the building blocks of the 10 kings, because again, as the prime minister from Denmark said, that they want to come together under things that they have all in common. And one thing they all share in common is the culture of monarchs, the culture of royalty, nobility, something that people can hold in high esteem above being a commoner, in that with that high regard, that what they're doing is righteous because of the crown that they have as heads of state and monarchs. So I just wanted to share this with you. This was really exciting to hear how the prime minister said the age of the old alliance is over. It's done. So that means we're moving into a new one, which prophecy in the book of Revelation and Daniel talks about is the rise of the 10 kings. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Reach out to me. Visit my website, therevelationwatchman.com, or get my book, The Falling Away, to help bring you towards what's happening in real time from from the book of Daniel to the most recent event, Pope Francis' death. And you can catch up and you know what to watch for next. So that way we can be edified. Because remember, 1 Corinthians chapter 14 tells us that prophecy has a function of edifying, comfort, and exhortation, not to scare you. And one thing I was told, and it just hit me, prophecy is God's protection against deception. So we want to keep that in mind too. So this is not to scare you or fearmonger, but so that you can watch and endure and do what Jesus said, which is to watch. In fact, Jesus tells us, blessed are those who watch. In Revelation 3:3, if you do not watch, I'm going to come upon you as a thief if you don't watch. So I just want to be your servant to show you what God is showing us all and drive you to the book of Revelation, the scriptures. Thank you so much for watching. Leave your comments below, visit my website and subscribe. And I can't wait to continue serving you.